I'm coming from the perspective of active travel, because active travel is actually where we need to be going to improve the environment and to actually give us better health. This is one of the things that is often overlooked when we start talking about active travel. Now, we have a highway in Devon, and this Tarka Trail, as it's known, is one of the reasons why all of us around here in Northern Bideford, Barnstable and Ilfracombe and Torrington decided we needed to get together and to try and improve not just the existing infrastructure, but to expand it. Why active travel? Well, as I've said, walking and cycling are healthy activities from which we can all benefit. They are low carbon activities. I'm not going to say they're zero carbon activities because I myself ride an electric bike. So therefore, it depends on where we get our electricity from. But they are definitely low cost, high economy activities. They are accessible to all. And one of the important things is that we must recognize that cycling is not purely recreational. It has to be recognized as a utility traveling solution. And as if we do this, then cycling can replace cars used for commuting, school runs and access to local businesses and shops. And I also feel very strongly that the cycling solution is a local solution to a global carbon problem. So if all of us at a local level start acting on this, we will have a major impact on a global problem. What do we need to do? Well, we need a better physical shared infrastructure. It's been very interesting listening to Tom and others about how can we possibly get a better physical infrastructure. A couple of points mentioned, which Tom mentioned, and that is the idea of the fact that we are a rural, essentially a rural environment. However, we have got an inordinate number of roads. To add to the figures earlier about the 8,000 miles, I believe that is more miles than any other county in the country. So we have options here. We have options to convert the use of some of these roads. A first attempt was made at this in Braunton recently, but you know, I don't think we were prepared enough for putting our arguments forward. However, if we can't have a dedicated infrastructure for cyclists, we need to improve the safety of those using the existing infrastructures. And that is one of the problems that we're facing. We had a death in Bideford only the other week when a cyclist was hit by a car. And this was actually to do with speed, a lot to do with speed, both the cyclist and the car. So we need better safety precaution. We need good signage, and we need to make sure that there is an awareness that our roads are not just for motor cars, they are also for cyclists. And our pavements can sometimes be shared by both. I think the biggest issue we are facing is the mindset change. I'm going to admit openly to my background as a Dutchman, and I was on a bicycle when I was 3 years old, and when I moved over here, I took my bicycle with me, and I was absolutely astounded at the public antipathy towards cycling. What on earth are you doing in Cardiff High Street cycling? You're a fool, you're going to kill yourself. And I've persisted, and I've persisted with cycling. And it is this mindset change that I do think this assembly needs to look at. We need to take away the idea that cycling is just for what we know as mammals, middle-aged men in lycra, or people just cycling around having fun. It is a utility solution to our carbon problem. And it can only be better if we focus on an improved infrastructure. Another very important point, I believe, is ecotourism. Devon depends on its tourists. Our economy is inextricably linked with tourism. And as a consequence, we need to ensure that we focus on ecotourism. That is a combination of buses, trains, cycling, walking, and horse riding for some people. We must not forget the horse riders. And so therefore, I think a transport solution for an area like Devon has to look at an improved infrastructure for the cyclists, the maintained infrastructure for such things as the Tarka Trail so that they don't fall into disrepair, which they have done, and to ensure that, for instance, trains carry bicycles in a more effective way without having to book it and without limited space to do so. So there are a number of things that we can do to actually get cars off the road, but it is actually about an integrated plan for cycling and walking, and an integrated plan for the railway network and for our public transport. So what are we doing at the moment? Well, there are a number of groups that have been created, including the Northern Devon Cycling Campaign. And these are to focus on the issue initially of cycling, but also of shared use. So we are also focusing on kids on scooters, people in wheelchairs. They all need to be catered for, because I actually think in terms of people in wheelchairs, we are way, way behind in our commitment to give them a decent infrastructure. And it so happens that that is pretty similar to what is needed for walking and cycling. Those of us who are actively involved in this, we are getting involved with the active travel agendas of most district and county councils, and we are pursuing a number of areas there where we can improve the infrastructure in Devon, but we do still meet with opposition, mainly from the public. Now, one of the ways forward in terms of a kind of, dare I say it, a bureaucratic approach, is there is nowadays a need for one to create a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. This is something that's come down from government and from regional government as a strategic plan for your walking and cycling, which can then be drawn into your local strategic plan. It becomes part of your planning for the future. And these local walking, or LC whips as they're called, there is already one in place for Torbay, and we are in the process now of creating one for Barnstable, Bideford and Northern. To finish with, it's about attitudes. And one of the issues that we hear when we talk about cycling is the fact that we are ourselves causing ourselves the biggest problem, because pedestrians are scared stiff when they are approached from behind and a cyclist comes whooshing by, and there have been a number of accidents. And as a consequence, we need to deal with this. And so therefore we have started a campaign here around the area to say, put a bell on it. Because if we are going to take cycling seriously, we need to be able to make sure that the public is comfortable with the shared access. I'm afraid I skipped over this slide accidentally, but what I see as needed for the Devon Carbon Plan is I do think the Carbon Plan has to focus on active travel. It isn't just good for the environment, it is good for the individual. There should be solutions that are based on local commuting, school access, and I noticed with interest the idea of closing down certain parts of the infrastructure during school opening times. I'd like to actually create an infrastructure that allows us all to cycle to school, the way I used to as a kid in the Netherlands. We should all be pursuing the creation of LC whips in all our councils, in all our areas. I'm very happy to provide help and advice on how this is done, but it's only with such a LC whip in place that we will have a good chance of applying for funding. As I've said before, we need to promote ecotourism because we have to sustain a tourist-based economy. And I believe that if we look at active travel and all the issues around it, that these will have a significant effect on reducing road usage. Yeah. Anyway, I will finish again with my last slide. Thank you all for listening. Thanks. I'm happy to take questions in our sessions.